Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Let's have a catch up with Matthew Dickerson. He's the Mayor for Dubbo Regional Council. How are you this morning?
I'm very good, thank you. Good to be chatting to you and, of course, all your listeners. I'm fascinated by the amount of interest there is in Dubbo from around the entire region, so it's great to talk to lots of people.
And there has been plenty of interest in Dubbo over the weekend. There was a huge touch footy competition on.
It was huge, actually. I thought it was going to be big and heard all the numbers, but once it got started, you realise just how big it was. 187 teams were playing in the tournament. These were under 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s and 18s from the northern half of the state. It's called the Junior State Cup. That approximately brought 8,500 people with it, and that was over 3 days of the tournament. So even on Thursday, you could actually start to feel the CBD through Dubbo just get that bit busy, a few more cars, a few more people walking around the streets. Then it got to Friday and, yeah, it was definitely busier. Restaurants, cafes were all booked out for every meal. If you wanted to grab a meal, a takeaway even on the weekend, it was very difficult to do that. Motels obviously were all booked out. We had people staying as far away as Parks, obviously motels in Narromine and Gilgandra and Wellington were all booked up as well. So that was fantastic. But the really important part was the impression that people had as they travelled to it. So again, think about the whole northern half of the state. In the past, this sort of tournament has been held on the coast. And so you can imagine some people go, oh, what are we going away at bush for? I'd rather go to the ocean and play around in the ocean when we've got time away from the games. And I think some people think that as soon as you go to the bush, in inverted commas, you get paddocks full of clods of dirt and you're going to have to bounce around cows while you're playing a game of touch footy. And they got here and there were 30 grounds that were immaculately prepared and it just looked absolutely perfect. The whole weekend looked absolutely perfect. So it was a really well organised event. New South Wales Touch Footy did a great job with their organisation. Our team, our council team did a great job. Dubbo Touch Association, they put some money in towards it as well and they were there helping organise things. So everyone worked really well together. Really, really fantastic event. The next thing for us, the next challenge for us is the next bid, which is a 3-year bid, will be finalised probably by the end of March. So we'd love to win that next bid for the next 3 years, but we've certainly put ourselves in a good position for that.
Absolutely marvellous. Yeah, I have family who live in Dubbo and they said that it was definitely, you could just feel it in the air around town. There was so many more people and it was just absolutely incredible. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And now we'll move to a topic that is probably not anybody's favourite, and that is car parking enforcement. There has been a new tool put into place.
It certainly wouldn't be a way that I would see to get myself popular. I sat in one of the cars that were being trialled for this little experiment. And, again, if I went around and waved my hand out the window and said, g'day to people who drove around, I don't think I'd be that popular. But car parking enforcement is popular. Is important, not popular, is important for businesses in our CBD. And getting that turnover of vehicles to make sure that they've got new customers coming through is something that's really important. Some places around the state or around the country choose to go with paid parking. And so obviously streets of Sydney, for example, you'll have your various parking meters. You've got to put your coins in the old days or your credit card in on these days to have those parking. We're trying to stay away from that, but we really do want people to roll those car parking spots over. So we've got our normal car parking officers. They go and mark the tyres and issue fines where they're needed. But one of the little trials that we've done, we've got 2 trials running at the moment. One of them that we've just completed has been a car that you drive around in. It's got a camera mounted on the side. It reads number plates as they drive along, and then it feeds that back into a computer inside, and it recognises those number plates, obviously, with a bit of AI, and basically then says a time, date, stamp and a location, says people that have been parked in their spots for too long. And what was fascinating to me as I sat there in the cars we drove around was how many times it made a little ding. So when it found someone that had been parked in their spot for too long, it just went bing, bing, bing. And we're driving along a couple of the main streets of Dubbo, and this thing's almost constantly beeping. So there are so many people that were parked outside the time zones, and the parking officer said they just don't get to book all of those people normally because you can't get to all those cars. But this sort of efficiency means that they possibly can get to those. Now, the trial's finished. We'll go and have a look at it. Our staff will analyse it. Obviously, there's going to be a cost to that device if we go forward with that. Is that worth it? Will we issue some more fines based on it? Will we get better turnover for those businesses? We'll analyse all of that. But the technology that's there, that was the thing that amazed me. very quickly, the other trial we've got going at the moment is we've got 150 car parking spots at the moment. We've got a sensor buried in the ground underneath the actual car parking spot. And it's a similar concept that our staff can be more efficient. So they get notified of someone that's been in their parking spot for too long, and then they can walk around there and issue a fine for that person if their car is still there when they get there. So there's different ways looking at how we might keep that car parking enforcement going.
Well, that second one, it sounds a little bit like systems that they have in the cities, in Westfield and places like that.
Yeah, they're similar to that. Those ones actually rely on overhead sensors, but obviously out on the street you haven't got a building overhead like you have in those car parking spots. So the sensor's actually buried in the ground. There's a very small hole put in the ground. It's probably the diameter of your thumb. A little hole drilled in the ground. The device sits in there. It's got a battery that lasts about 5 years, and it just senses cars that come over the top of it and then sends out a signal when there's someone that's been there for too long. So, yeah, similar to those ones in the big smoke, in those car parking places that you're talking about, but a little bit different because it's got to be underground.
Well, a good reminder for everyone to keep an eye on the time when they go and park in the CBD then. Alrighty. And there has been a development application put in for a fourth McDonald's in Dubbo.
And I've had a few people question me about this, Noni. It's actually an interesting one. Some people, and I've got no opinion about the types of businesses we have, whether you like McDonald's or hate McDonald's, whatever, it's totally relevant from my perspective. And when I say my perspective, I'm talking about the bigger the council perspective. But some people have said to me, how can you possibly get a fourth McDonald's in? We've got enough McDonald's. We don't want another McDonald's. And that's not council's job. Council's job is not to decide the type of businesses that we like or don't like in a particular community. It's not for us to say, I don't like businesses painted orange, or I love businesses painted pink. Let's have more of those. When someone lodges a development application, there's a range of things they've got to comply with legally. It's got to be in the right zoning, for example. The building's got to be constructed correctly. There's a whole range of things it's got to comply with legally. One of those things is not whether we think it's a good idea for this type of business or whether we think that business is going to be viable. Some people have said to me in the past with other businesses, I don't think that business will go any good. You shouldn't approve that because it won't make any money. Well, it's not for us to decide those types of things. So one thing that we have done in the past, sometimes we might have targeted certain types of businesses. So Aldi, I remember many years ago, I went and met with Aldi at the head office down in Sydney because the community kept telling me that we really wanted an Aldi here in Dubbo. But again, even if I knocked on the door and said, hey, I'm the mayor of Dubbo, can you come along and give us an Aldi? They're going to say, well, thanks very much for knocking on our door, but we've got our own metrics that we decide whether or not a community will support a particular type of business. So we'll rely on those metrics rather than a mayor knocking on the door saying, please come. But again, in this case, obviously McDonald's have got their metrics. I'm sure they've got population numbers, they've got how many cars go on a highway, they've got demographic information, and they've got over 1,000 stores across the nation. So I think their metrics will be pretty good. If they decide that Dubbo could handle another McDonald's, I'm sure that's the reason they put that DA in. We'll assess that based on the legal compliance and then make a decision based on all of that, not on whether or not we think we should have a fourth McDonald's or not.
Fair enough. Got to keep the process fair. And Art Express is back in town. Tell us a little bit about this.
We haven't had Art Express for a few years because of that little pesky pandemic thing that came along and interrupted so many parts of our lives. But Art Express is this concept where they take all the artworks from HSC students each year. So there were approximately 8,000 HSC artworks in the year 2022. Then they collate those down to a couple of hundred of the best of those. And then different galleries around the state get to pick from those couple of hundred and actually use the ones that they think are the ones most appropriate to their community. So we had a local art teacher from St John's, Tamara Laurie, who had the job of curating these particular artworks. So she chose 38 of those ones that were available for selection, and they're now on display for the next 8 weeks at our Western Plains Cultural Centre. And I love looking at these, and I remember many years ago when we used to look at these, 2019 was the last time we had it at the Western Plains Cultural Centre, and I remember looking at those, and again, in this one that we've got now, just the difference, the creativity, the variety of different types of media that people are working with, it's fascinating. And I know some of my kids have done art through the HSC. I know the parameters and the restrictions they've got on what they can do, and I also know they've got to study for a whole range of other subjects as well. So to have the time to create these absolute masterpieces and to think they're typically 17 or maybe 18 years of age is absolutely wonderful. So if you're in Dubbo over the next 8 weeks, I'd definitely recommend drop down to the Western Plains Cultural Centre. Sure, there's a nice cafe there as well, grab something to eat or drink, but go in and have a look at it. It's free to go in and have a look. And there's one local student as well, which I thought was pretty exciting, one student from St John's, Kira Bussey, has got her artwork on display there. So even just having a local involved in that Art Express is pretty exciting as well.
Very much so. Great to see all that hard work paying off. And finally, we'll just loop back around to the touch of footy again because you've got a little something to mark that occasion.
Well, I had to write a little limerick for another segment over the weekend about the touch footy that was occurring in Dubbo, so I thought it might be nice to share the limerick with you. So, and I'm not sure if limerick qualifies as poetry, but I'll take it. So here we go. In Dubbo, the sun shines so bright. The green grounds are a lovely sight. With touch footy to play on a fine weather day, it's a scene that just feels so right.
Oh, bravo, bravo. Matthew Dickerson, Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, thanks so much for catching up with us, and we'll do it again in a fortnight.
Always my pleasure, Noni. Thank you for your time.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.